The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan, themorganreport.com, October 2nd, 2020. Well, I want to start out with the third quarter ending and what the performance has been for the metals and oil up to this point for this year. So year to date, aluminum is off 5%, cobalt is up 6%, copper is up 6%, lead is off 6%, nickel's up 2%, tin is up 1.5%, and zinc is up 3%. Year to date on the precious metals, gold is up 23%, palladium is up 14%, platinum is down 12%, and silver is up 28%. The HUI is up 32%, and gold is at 22%, with silver up 28%. So the index, HUI index, which is the gold miners, is not performing much better than the metals themselves. And the XAU is at 31%. So it's just a percent or two higher than silver is, which again is not outperforming the metals as usually happens. There's several reasons for that I've talked about in the Morgan Report. A lot has to do with the production rate and several other factors, but those are the facts that I kind of want to emphasize that point. Moving on, crude oil is off 35%, heating oil is off 35%, natural gas is only off 2%, and gasoline is off 30%. So that is a report on the metals and energy, or oil, for 3/4 of the way through 2020. And let's move on. And the first article up this week is from the Financial Post. The headline is, "The stores and restaurants closing the most locations across Canada in 2020. So I'll go through this pretty quick. You can read the article this weekend. Bed Bath & Beyond, Starbucks. And these aren't like every location, but several. Like, for example, Starbucks here closing up to 200 over the next 2 years. This is in Canada. David's Tea, Time Maternity, Carlton Cards and Papyrus, Pier 1 Imports, Justice Loft and Ann Taylor, Lowe's, Aldo, GNC, Bench, Nados Canada, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, Laser Quest, Microsoft, Henry's, Frank and Oak, Sale, and it goes on. So again, I want to be strong here that this is not every location, but they're closing some stores in Canada, and it's called the retail apocalypse. I'll stand by my words about where I think that this whole situation is going, and in my view, it's not going to be extremely bright. Something to pay attention to as the currency collapse continues. This is from Reuters. U.S. dollar share of global reserves dips in second quarter. The U.S. dollar share of currency reserves reported by the International Monetary Fund was 61.3% in the second quarter, down from the first 3 months of the year, the IMF data showed on Wednesday. A year earlier, the dollar accounted for 61.3% of global reserves, still the largest share among all currencies, while the share was 61.8% in the first quarter. IMF data also showed global reserves rose to a record 12 trillion in the second quarter from 11.7 in the first quarter. Reserves held in U.S. dollars totaled 6.9 trillion, or roughly 61%. I've been mentioning airlines of late. American United move ahead with more than 32,000 furloughs, but will recall workers if CV aid deal is reached. Next up is from CNBC. World politics. The U.S. and China could slip into quote-unquote new Cold War that pushes countries to pick sides. A split between the world's two largest economies would likely force Southeast Asian countries to take sides, even though they would want to be pragmatic and remain friendly to both countries as long as possible. Tay also said it would be difficult for Asian countries to resist the pull from China's gravity in terms of size and its influence. But that's not to say they will all side with China. I also throw in, and it's not in this article, that beware the cyber war that's going on really constantly, not only between nation states, but all over the web. And also that the fact I've mentioned many times that the security on the web is not as secure as most people are led to believe. And speaking of cyber war, here's another one in modern times. This is from Breaking Defense, Air Force Networks, and Cyber. Mitchell touts low-cost drones as force multipliers. The steady cautious that no matter how smart, drones only are complementary force multiplying capabilities. They're not replacements for fifth-generation stealth aircraft such as the F-35 and F-22. I'm not going to read the whole article. I just want you to be aware that wars and rumors of wars, they are out there, folks, and it's not just conventional, as most of you are well aware. We're looking at cyber attacks, and we're looking at stealth drones, and we're looking at a lot of force multipliers that some wouldn't account for, but people that listen to this weekly perspective are probably in tune with. Hitting strikes on Financial Post this week. This is downward spiral continues in U.S. shale as 190 companies teeter on the brink of bankruptcy. In less than 2 months since U.S. President Donald Trump traveled to Texas to declare that the U.S. energy industry laid low by this year's oil price crash was back on its feet and we're now okay, the facts remain that most of these companies are bankrupt and approaching bankruptcy, as this article says. You're free to read the rest this weekend. Michael Snyder, global food shortages are becoming very real, and the U.S. grocery store chains are preparing for worst-case scenarios. Highly recommend that you go to endoftheamericandream.com for this article. You can go through it. It's pretty simple, but very alarming as far as food is concerned. Well, let's get some good news out there. This is from The Guardian on the environment. A new super enzyme that degrades plastic bottles 6 times faster than before has been created by scientists that could be used for recycling within a year or two. The super enzyme, designed from bacteria that naturally evolved the ability to eat plastic, enables the full recycling of the bottle. So I'll stop there. It's at The Guardian. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Sounds like they're on track. And certainly this is a big polluter, as we all know, the amount of plastic that's wasted every year. So some good news on the environment. So I won't really go into gold and silver much. I did at the beginning, and from my perspective, gold and silver established a new trading range lower than where they have been recently, and they will reestablish a base and over time move higher. I want to move on to the political scene, which I am not a big fan of politics. One of my main mentors was Harry Browne with an E, Browne. And Harry, you can look in his Wikipedia, was actually ran for president of the United States on the Libertarian ticket. But the first time I heard him speak that government is force, it kind of put me back on my heels a bit. But the more I read, studied, and learned, the more I agreed with him. This is one of the many quotes from Harry Browne. Government is force, pure and simple. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And because government is force, it will attract the worst elements of a society. People want to use government to avoid having to earn their living and to avoid having to persuade others to accept their ideas voluntarily. I would say, am I a libertarian? Yeah, maybe. But I'd say more of a voluntarist, where we get to voluntarily interact with each other. And to go just a bit further, you can Google this. It's at harrybrowne.org. He's got 7 principles here. Government is force is number 1. Government is politics. Whenever you turn over to the government a financial, social, medical, military, commercial matter, it automatically is transformed into a political issue. 3, you don't control government. 4, every government program will be more expensive and more expansive than anything you had in mind when you proposed it. 5, power will always be misused. 6, government doesn't work. 7, government must be subject to absolute limits. So I think you may or may not get my drift, because it's not a left or right situation in my view. It's not choosing sides, which many do and wish to do and want to do and identify with. I don't identify left or right. I identify with the principles. Government is force. And that will be it this week for the Weekly Perspective. I will be back with you next week with more information to hopefully make you think and question the current reality.